we were perceived as a family that lived in one of the most disadvantaged areas in Birmingham.
You've got to, as a leader, say, I'm going to take some things away. Some things have got to go.
Teachers do not check their work accurately. School leaders do not have the necessary skills. The school is not keeping pupils safe at all times. We're joined today by Sonia Thompson and Tracey Adams, leaders of a Birmingham research school and successful authors. Sometimes in education, people have something that works really well in their classroom, and for whatever reason, they decide to keep it in their classroom and not share it with everybody else in their school. And I always wondered why people did that, and there are loads of reasons. Is that something you experienced at schools that you've worked in?
Definitely. And for me, I think it is a little bit about the culture of the school.
Okay.
If you're in a school where it is kind of your classroom and you kind of close the door and there's not a sharing kind of feel there, I think teachers do, begin to then feel that, A, nobody's interested in what I've got to share, but B, it's just not what we do in our space. So, definitely. I've probably done it myself because I've been in that type of school. So, I think it's something that's done quite a lot.
And then now at St Matthew's, that doesn't sound like that's the culture. What do you think, Tracey?
I think at St Matthew's, I think we've really thought about how we professionally develop our teachers. And I think part of the process is definitely giving them an opportunity to share. Mm-hmm. So at the end of most of our PDs, we're always talking about actually let's agree on a goal, something that we're all going to work to, and then give them time when we come back to the next section to actually share and be really proud and show off what they've done and tell us what some of the good things that have happened and actually what are some of the pitfalls around and what they've done, so that actually we can all get better in that kind of trajectory together and improve together. So I think it's a really important part of what we do now, definitely. But as Sonia said, definitely in the past, you just kind of feel, I'm in my little corner. Yeah. I don't even want anybody to see, to be fair, because I'm not sure if it's any good. But I think if you build that into your development and how you work together as a team, it can be really collaborative. Yeah.
I love how, like, straight off the bat, you refer to what I would call staff meetings as PD. Like this isn't a meeting of our staff. This is some professional development where we are going to enhance each other, absolutely. Or somebody will come and enhance us and develop us. And then you have a goal at the end of it. So I'm a governor at the school that my son will go to. He'll go to he's at an infant school at the moment. He'll go to a junior school. And we've been talking about maths and science there. And they're telling me their targets and the key things they're working on at the moment. And it sounds like for your staff at the end of each staff meeting, you have a goal that everybody's working on together. And I also love how you're happy to share the things that don't work. When I do some of the maths training I do, I love for people to come back and tell me, Liam, you said have a go at this and it hasn't worked for me.
Yes,
I like that. I like that because not everything, well, we'll talk about Dylan William later, but not everything is going to work everywhere. Yeah, exactly.
And I think mistakes are a part of the process. Yeah. We say that to children, don't we? That making mistakes is a part of the process. And actually, you can learn a lot from sharing that actually it didn't go well, and then unpicking why it didn't go well and what you can do better. So you developed the culture at St Matthew's of sharing within your staff. Do you share outside your school as well?
We became a teaching school in 2014, before teaching hubs were around. And I think, we're a church school, so there is a little bit of kind of servant leadership about the way that we work. And I just think our profession is complex, it's challenging. And I think if you have an opportunity to share and support other schools or whatever stage they're at, because we have people who contact us at whatever stage they're at, it is about making time, being open, being honest about the things that they're asking you to support them with, because, I'm always about context and what works at our school. It is about how do you implement that at your school? We became a Talk for Writing training centre. So again, we've had lots of opportunities to support teachers with writing. And we became a research school in 2019. So again, we are constantly working with other schools, disseminating that kind of evidence-informed practice. So I think it's just in us as a school. And we're a tiny school. You know, we're a one-form entry school. We've got 7 classes. But we feel that we're small and mighty. And mighty not in an arrogant sense, but mighty in the sense that actually we do want to support other schools. We do want to help. We do see the challenges. We do see the pitfalls. And we'd like to help whoever needs our help, with just working on that and hopefully improving. Yeah,
I like that, small and mighty. That feels like a really nice place to come from. When researching you, I thought it was really interesting. I heard a lovely story about Tracey lining her bears up on the stairs, taking a register as a child and always wanting to be a teacher. But Sonia, you didn't want to be a teacher. Was that because you hadn't enjoyed the experience of school yourself?
A little bit of that. I think I'm a bit indecisive, and I've always been indecisive. It's strange. I've got a strange mix of indecisiveness and decisiveness, but I think I kind of err to indecisive. And growing up, I didn't quite pin down what I wanted to do. I've gone through phases of things that I wanted to do and wanted to be. So I think I started off as a writer. Then I moved into engineering, and to the point where I actually did this new course, and I was the only girl with 39 other boys studying to be an engineer. And then when I finished that program at the end of secondary school, I said, I don't want to be an engineer. So I did journalism. I actually took a journalism course and applied to go to university to study journalism. And then, I don't want to do that anymore. What do I want to do? I want to do law now. So then I kind of pursued law, left university, applied to the College of Law in London. And then I realised that actually I've come out of university, I'm broke. And I saw a really good programme that would employ you for 2 years. So you'd get paid. The first year you'd work in schools.
Yep.
And the second year you do your PGCE. And all I saw was you would get paid. So I thought, I could do that. I could be a teacher.
Do you know, that's so funny, because on one of the other podcasts we spoke to a gentleman called Tony Ryan. And now he was working as a mechanic and he didn't especially want to be a teacher. And he said he was getting the tube one day home in London and he saw an advert in a paper and it said, get paid to train. And he thought, get paid?
Get paid.
Okay, I'll ring that.
I could do that.
And he went on and he was the head teacher of 2 schools. He's now the CEO of Design and Technology Association. So
it was meant to be.
Yeah, it was meant to be. It was meant to be. When researching you, I've heard you talk about children from disadvantaged backgrounds sometimes being deficit. Yeah. Did you feel that applied to you growing up?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I think we're actually sisters, and we're actually 2 of 10.
Okay.
So in Birmingham, the area where we grew up is a very disadvantaged area. And I think that there's a perception of children from big families, and there's a perception of black children, and there's a perception of the type of family support that you'd get. But actually, we've come from a family where education was
the top thing,
was the total thing that our parents said you got to focus in on that.
I find that really interesting that you had a home life where education was the most important thing and you felt really supported and valued. And then you got to school and it was the opposite. There was a preconception, these children aren't going to attain, they're not going to.
No. And you also encountered racism, you encountered it, you had it full force. I never forget being in a science lesson and saying about where black people come from, monkeys, and the science teacher actually said that in the lesson. And we were like, the few of us that were there, because we'd gone outside of our area to go to that school because my mum felt it would be a better school. We were just like, whoa, you're going to say that? And we're sitting here and people just being sent out of class literally because of the colour of their skin. So we actually, we saw it, we felt it. But I think our parents, again, instilled a confidence in us, not to let it take you over or not to let that bring you down, but still keep pushing. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Did you know that was racism at the time?
I think we knew that it wasn't right.
Yeah, it wasn't right, yeah.
I remember an incident in a school where the teacher said it was okay to use the M word. And it was really interesting because we had a sixth form centre attached, and there was a really popular white student, and he just happened to walk in the room at the time, and the teacher said to him, "It's all right, isn't it?" And he was so straight-faced, and he said, No, it isn't. No, it isn't. And it really affected me that he, in that moment, kind of stood his ground. And we knew, but it was great to have an ally in the space. He was a sixth former, and that was really powerful to feel that when we knew it wasn't right, and there were other people who knew that wasn't right as well, and not adults, but students. So I think, we kind of knew, but you didn't kind of have the voice to it. Because if you're not that type, I'm standing up for it. We weren't that type necessarily, because we weren't brought up like that. But you knew, you felt it, and you knew. So it was great, that, to have the allies to speak up about it, and it kind of like,
I like that boy. Something I say to my children all the time is, I want you to do the right thing, even when everybody else is doing the wrong thing. And I like that he gave you that great confidence.
And he was one of the most popular boys in the school. And, I kind of, wow, he was even more popular in my eyes. It was fantastic. It was amazing. So,
Do you feel then that you had to battle when you were children? And has that encouraged you to battle for children now, definitely. To give them opportunities?
Definitely. Yeah. And I think it's this idea that just because you happen by birth to be born in an area of disadvantage, I always say we're not deficit. We've never been deficit. And there are perceptions of children who come from these types of areas that they won't amount to anything. They're not that good. We don't need to. And we have adults who come into the spaces in disadvantaged schools, and they're not there to challenge the children to be the very best that they can be. And that is just not what I'm about at all. If you come into the space, you've got to work to make sure that those children achieve, because they are just as good as anybody else, and they deserve the best. They deserve it.
And that's who you're looking for.
Yeah. We're looking for those people.
I always say that people kind of have to find your school. And sometimes if it's not your school, then sometimes if you can't see that this is the culture and this is what we're passionate about and this is what drives us, then you have to find the right place for you. I know early on in my career, I used to go from school to, I used to say 2 years at a place, because I thought, God, they're not serious here. I want to find a school where everybody's serious about really making a difference for children. And since I've got to St Matthew's, I've been here for 11 years, because it is a culture where we're serious about, this is a child's one chance in reception, one chance in year one. We've got to make it the best that it can be, because again, if we go back to this idea of who we're serving in our areas, they already have that challenge of their skin colour being a challenge when they're going to go out further and into the wider world, and we've got to set it up right for them, that actually they've got a real confidence. They see themselves as judges, as lawyers, as teachers, or whatever they want to be, and they really see that, and then they can then become passionate about learning and knowledge. And truly our children are, I would say, they're really passionate about learning and thriving.
We are small and we are mighty.
We are small.
Is there a Caribbean saying, is it Talawa?
Talawa.
Yeah, little bit Talawa.
We love that.
Little bit Talawa.
Yeah.
I'd just like to come on to backpacks. So there's two parts to this question. I'd love to know what was in your backpacks when you went to school, and then secondly, how you enable your staff to unpack children's backpacks?
I think the idea of backpacks, if I can just put a little context to it, it came out of the work that I did when I was English consultant, and we were looking at teachers as readers and being a reading teacher and empowering children to share their reading, not only in school, but also from home, and breaking that perception that children from areas of disadvantage don't read at home. Empowering teachers to understand that the reading that we do is not just about a thick book, but also about the labels and the boxes and the cereal boxes and the sign that you walk past, and even the game that you play, the reading that you have to do to get to the next level. And one of the things that we did as part of that was look at the work of Louis Malle. And Louis Malle is a South American researcher, and he talks about the fact he was researching in rural communities where children were coming from they were farmers' children, and they were measuring and understanding the seasonal cycle so you could grow crops, and they were packing, and had so many skills. Yet when they went to school, they were perceived as having nothing, bringing nothing to the table, having no cultural capital. And I think we use that word a lot. But I after thinking about Louis Malle's work, and it came from a lot of the work that I was doing with Teresa Kremin at the time, children have existing capital. And they bring that existing capital to school. And I think for me, my existing capital was that I was a reader. And we read, we were encouraged to go to the library. I remember going to the library. I remember going to the library with my 5 other brothers and sisters. I remember taking out books, loving writing. I remember my mom telling me that my primary school teacher, my nursery teacher, said, Sonia needs to get outside a little bit more. At nursery, all she does is sit in the corner and read and write. And I remember my mom telling me that. I remember being somebody who knew the Bible, because we were a family that, we went to church and every day, and we knew the Bible stories. And I remember if any teacher had ever asked me, I could recite those stories inside out. So we had existing capital, but no one ever asked us to talk about that, because we were perceived as the big family, because there was a Thompson in every year group at secondary school. So it's all the Thompsons. We were perceived as a family that lived in one of the most disadvantaged areas in Birmingham. So that was what people thought of us. But actually, we brought a lot to the table. We brought a lot to the table. So for me, it's recognising that children have every child has something. It might not always be positive things, and I think, of course, you've always got to be careful, but whatever they're doing at home that is working for them, it's about making time to share that. So, yeah, it's really important.
I remember doing guided reading sessions with my class, year 1, and we did a carousel of activities, and when they worked with me, we'd have a book and we'd have a look at a book. But that first session, I'd generally just ask them about, who do you live with? And I just wanted to know a little bit about that. It was a lovely time for me just to learn a little bit about them. And thinking back, I should have done lots more about their cultural capital and getting to know them. And I could have inputted that into our lesson, into our learning. What do you do, Tracey, at St Matthew's to unpack backpacks?
Well, what we do is that we use, we have like an hour curriculum where we have opportunities to share about our lives, our families, our future, our passions. And at the start of most of our units, we always then, as the teacher, open up our backpack and actually share. So if it was something around the passions, like for me in my backpack, no one ever asked me and never knew that I sung. And I was winning singing competitions at the age of 9, 10 and 11, going around the country and winning and beating people and, singing, but no one ever asked me about that. because we went to church. We were great orators. We could speak, we could read, we were confident, but nobody ever opens that up. So it's great to share. Even the fact that you're from 10, I never forget sharing that in year 6. And a couple of children said, we're from 10. And then it just ignites lots of conversation and lots of talk. You show them your house, you show them where you live. If you've got animals, and they begin to share and they share about their passions. And I think what's really brilliant about it is it's a way of connecting, isn't it? It's a way of connecting.
It's belonging as well.
Yeah, belonging, connecting. Even if, I did a PSHE session just a couple of days ago. We were talking about different family types, and I mentioned that I'm from a single parent. I'm a single parent, and then the boy who at the time when we started to share didn't want to share, all of a sudden sat up and said, "I'm from a single parent family," and it was like, yeah, it's okay. There's a couple of us. There's a range of different families in this room. And it's fine. And it's connection, relationships, belonging. It just opens up. Yeah.
You're safe.
You're safe.
Yeah. You're
And what you
understood.
say matters. What you say
what
matters.
you say matters.
Your backpack is important because it's you. It's what you're about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to make time to find out.
I just want to hear a little bit more about your curriculum there, because I feel like in early years we give a little bit of time to learning about ourselves, and especially at the start of the year when we're thinking about baseline and that type of thing, we'll find out about the children in our care, because it's so important in our early years framework to follow our children's interests. The amount of times I talk to people and say, if your children like dinosaurs, let's count with dinosaurs. If they like fairy gardens, let's count fairies in the garden. Let's just follow their interests. But then I worry at year 1 to year 6, we're on the national curriculum now, and we need to we've got geography, we've got history, we've got science, we've got to fit these things in, and none of these things are going to relate exactly to those children. So how in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 how does our curriculum fit in?
We use it every half term. So there's a theme for every half term. And it's an opportunity for the teacher to share, for the children to share. So we have our lives, our families, our community, our passion, our global village, our future. And what's the last one, Sonia?
Our world.
Our world, perfect.
And is this an hour a week, or is this threaded throughout?
It's kind of an overarching theme that we use to kind of drive forward as a starting place for our curriculum. And one of the things that we do is we every half term we always have a parent to school day, and on that day is normally the day when we really celebrate that hour. And then the parents are actually in the room. So when we're talking about our community, they can actually talk about their community. When we're talking about our world, wherever they're from, they can then share and support their children to explore that and bring it out. So it's kind of embedded in everything we do.
Yeah.
It's like that running thread across the whole of the curriculum that all of us as subject leaders think about.
That sounds really powerful, especially having the parents in. Sometimes we have topic-based curriculums and we're thinking about history this term, and it's the Romans and everything's linked to the Romans. But yours sounds like a PSHCE-based curriculum where it starts with us and comes us as in the community and the children and leads from there.
And I think I would say that we're quite a knowledge-rich school. We're kind of well known for our knowledge-rich drive. But I think you can do both. I think you can, and I think even our curriculum will stand alone because it's that important. And then we will do it, and then we will link it back to what else the other things that we're teaching. But we know that across our school that is our theme. So when we do assemblies, we talk about it. When we do singing assembly, you'll mention it. Teachers will talk about it all the time, and understand that if for this half term it's our lives, our families, wherever there are links, and it does have to be a good link, then we'll bring that in. So it is about just weaving it in and just making it part of the fabric of your school, so that children understand that that backpack is important. And there's always opportunities then to talk about yourself and be confident that type of sharing is who you are, is about you, and about you belonging in the community, in the space of St Matthew's. Yeah.
And when you're finding out about the children and unpacking backpacks, are you ever surprised? Is there ever something where you thought, I would have never thought that about that child or that family. Similar to if somebody had unpacked your backpacks with the reading and the singing, like that would have surprised people.
I think we're always surprised. I think our families do much more than we think they're doing.
Yeah.
I remember being in a school when we did the original research, and I can never say the name, Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
There was a family that we actually went to their house, and the parents, that book was on their bookshelf.
Really?
And they were in the heart of Ladywood, one of the toughest areas in Birmingham. But they were readers. And they were readers of classical literature, living in blocks of flats that were terrible. And you won't ever know anything about that if you don't take time to find out. Our children, some of our families take our children to book festivals. They're aspirational. Some of our families, we found out that in Somalia, they're actually doctors and teachers, but they can't work in those professions here. But they are aspirational for their children, and they might be living in Nechells. And Nechells is a tough area. It's one of the toughest areas in Britain. We've got two student doctors who are on placement, and one of the doctors said to me, "Your school feels so different from Nechells." She said, "Because I did a placement in Nechells, and gosh, there was lots of stabbings." She said, "Lots of stabbings." So I said, "Yeah, that's what we're trying to really work to achieve." And I'm glad you've got a sense of that, because we want the children to be aspirational. She says, "Yeah, I get that." And when you're working in Nechells, you forget that sometimes, just how tough it is. You do forget, but it is a challenge. But there's parents who they want the best. They do want the best for their children.
Do you feel like the community appreciates you? I can imagine you both being seen around Nechells and the younger generation remembering
you
you at school and you know, maybe they're giving off a certain attitude because they're walking around Nechells, and you've got to give off that attitude. But when they see you, that breaks a little bit.
You get that.
You get that all the time. I think the community really, we've developed a really wonderful relationship with them, and over time, I think they've really come to kind of get on board with the fact, and really, I see us really working together to really support.
What would your advice be for other schools who want to foster that relationship? What are there 2 top tips that you can give?
Get on that gate.
Get on that gate. And I think senior leaders know that. They know that. I think people know that. But I think when parents come into the space, they've got to know that there's some reciprocity there, that it's not about we are in charge, we have the brains, you have nothing, you have to listen to us. It's about a 2-way sharing, and you've got to find that place where parents feel as if that space is their space as well. And not this place where they've got to, there's people in there who don't appreciate who I am. No matter what I do, because I'm not saying, whatever they do, we've got to appreciate whatever they do, and we've got to work with that. I think you've got to open your school out. You do have to open the doors to your school. Hence why we do Parents to School Day. And we do it every half term. Parents can come, they can stay. They can have lunch. They can be in the classrooms watching the teachers teach. And I think lockdown provided this level of appreciation of teachers, and if we don't really harness that, we'll lose that, because parents don't necessarily know what we do, and I think they appreciate, God, is that what you lot do? Teach them to do this and that and the other, and I think they appreciate that. And so when they do come into schools and they see how we manage 30 children, how their child who at home is a nightmare, we with 29 others can get them to focus and work and improve and move forward. I think they appreciate that. So I think you do have to open your doors. And often schools find that a challenge for various reasons, some valid reasons as well. But you've got to kind of take that step, because we know the research does tell us that the better the relationship, the better the outcomes for the children.
And I think it needs strong communication.
Yeah.
They do want to know about the smallest of things.
Yeah.
They want to know which visitors are coming in. They want to know about what you're teaching in the classroom. They want to know those things. So really communicating with them and sharing the joy of the learning, I think.
And just getting really technical then on communication, is that a weekly newsletter that's printed out given to every child? Is that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram? How do you communicate?
We're not a Twitter or a Facebook type school, but we do weekly
newsletters, bulletins.
We tell our parents who the visitors are, so that when their child comes back and home and starts talking about, we had the opera singers in this week, they're like, we knew they were coming in. And our parents have told us that. They've told us you didn't tell us who was coming in. So when you had the tallest black basketball player in the world coming into your school, we didn't even know. So, and my child came home and said this 7-foot man was in the building, and they were like, so they told us that. So I think you've got to ask parents continuously, what is the best way to communicate? Text messages. Our parents love text messages. We had to close the school yesterday because there was a burst water main. So at 7, we had a parent send us an email to say your communication was on point yesterday. Nice. Yeah, she was, and even I saw her today, and she was like, "Gosh, credit where credit's due." And she's one of our toughest parents.
Yes. Do your children see you as role models?
I would hope so.
I'd like to think so.
I'd like to think
I'd like to think they do.
And you feel like they can aspire to be like you because they're not having the experience you had. There's no racism. There's no judging. There's just an opportunity for everybody. And I imagine you promote that all of the time.
I do think it's a false economy though in our school, because of course the world doesn't necessarily look like our school. It's a microcosm of happy, clappy people who are successful. That's not necessarily the experience on the outside world. Yeah. But I think in the same way that we had a level of confidence to tackle that, I think it's about instilling in our children that level of empathy, because that's really important, that level of empathy, that level of understanding that actually empathy is about action. So we've got to not just see and ignore, but we've got to action things. And I think it's important that we just create children that are empathetic and aware of others, and are aware that there is a need to challenge the things that are going on in the world. And I think it's that we're trying to develop. You're going to face things. You're going to face challenges. This St Matthews isn't the world, but hopefully it's a world where you can grow, you can develop, you can be aspirational, and hopefully you can give something back in terms of what you bring.
Have you faced those challenges? So you said you taught in kind of middle class areas and in London and other places, and you experienced racism as children.
Yeah.
Did you experience racism when you were applying for jobs, do you think?
I don't necessarily know. Because...
And maybe it's subconscious racism.
Maybe it's unconscious, biases along the way, and of course people say things. Like, gosh, that's an interesting thing to say to a black woman. You probably.
I was thinking back to when we when it was you and Paulette and used to have another lady with you.
Yeah.
And she was a white lady, and that people would come to like meetings and they'd start talking to her. And the two ladies were the head and the deputy, and they'd start talking to the assistant head.
And we were probably the first black head and deputy in Birmingham. And the lady was our assistant head. And it was interesting. Gosh, I didn't even think of that, but actually that happened a lot because we're not necessarily in those roles.
When you go to schools, and even because we train so far and wide as part of the EEF with what we do, we encounter lots of schools, and this is not the norm.
Our school isn't the norm.
Even in terms of the teacher makeup, and it's just not the norm. So I think it is sometimes when people do come in, they're like, okay. And it's almost like we almost have to prove ourselves that actually what we say, we actually do. And then it's like you can see the kind of turn in some people as if to say, okay, they are able to do what they do. But I don't think it's blatant.
There will be teachers who are moving schools or have just moved schools who are listening to this or watching this and want to take positive experiences from a previous school to a new school. Now, I wanted to ask you about this specifically because I know, Sonia, you were involved with an inadequate school some years ago. And how do you go into a new school and not say, at my last school we did this, and at my last school we did that? Because often that isn't received well, is it?
No, it isn't.
So
it isn't.
How did you approach that?
Tried not to say that. That's what we tried not to say.
Because just to give some context to this, so I've read the Ofsted report, and I felt if I was a parent of a child at that school, like that would have hit me really hard. I'll just tell you a few things. So pupils are not making enough progress because teachers do not check their work accurately or give them tasks that are well matched to their abilities. School leaders do not have the necessary skills to identify weaknesses in teaching in order to raise the standard of attainment or improve pupils' progress. And then finally, the school is not keeping pupils safe at all times. So imagine reading that and thinking, where do I start? What was your approach?
I think we wanted staff to be aware of the responsibilities that they had of being a teacher in charge of children's futures. And I think it's important that it's not about us as people. We're important within the space, but are the most important people are the children. And if we're not doing the best for the children, then we're not doing our jobs. And I think that message, along with getting that school to understand that you have a cult, you've got some mottos, you've got some visions, yet you must have had those for a reason. Yet you're not living them out. Surely that can't be right. So we took them back to that vision, their vision, their culture, and I think we took them back to the why. Why is it important that we live out the vision for the most important people in our spaces, who are the children? They've only got one chance, and if we don't make sure that chance is worthy of who we are as the adults, educated people coming into a space, coming into a work. It's a two-way thing, with work. You give and you receive. And if you're not giving but you're receiving, then you're not doing your job. You're not doing your job. And I think when the school realised that, gosh, these people actually, there's some harsh messages, but they do care. They care about us as people. They care about our children. They kind of know what they're talking about, we think.
They begin to trust you, don't they?
That you build that trust, I think. And it's never about, I think you're right, and I think there were some things that we tried to transport, because you always think, God, we do that, you do that. But you can't. You've got to realise that not everything can just be lifted. It's always about context, and it's always about good implementation.
I was just going to say that. I think good school improvement, it's almost like the soil needs to be the culture and the context. And if that's not good quality, then there's no point trying to pile on all these school improvement initiatives. And actually, as a community, as a school, we're not really understanding why are we here and what are we trying to do. So I think you have to we went in and we kind of tried to unpick that. And you almost had to build some people back up. There were some really good teachers in there.
Brilliant
teachers in the school, but they didn't recognise that within themselves, because the culture and the school as a community just felt so dragged down. So it's almost like you have to you've got to fertilise that soil again and get everybody to really, what are we about? What are we saying we're about in terms of the children, the people that we're serving, these children, this community. And when you've got that kind of bed right, then you have to, and sometimes you have to pull out weeds, because we know sometimes weeds can get in there. Sometimes you have to pull them out. But then you can start the school improvement. But if you go in and you just bombard people with all of that negativity, you're never going to get anywhere.
That's interesting. Chris Dyson, who we've spoken to also, he joined his school, Parklands, his previous school, and that was inadequate at the time. And he talks about people from a business world or a corporate world might think, oh, you've got an inadequate school, you need to get rid of all of the teachers. And he said he didn't get, I don't think there was a single member of staff who was moved on. He said there were some brilliant teachers there, and it sounds like you had a similar experience.
Yeah. To be fair, I don't think we, even site managers, the school was, but gosh, everybody kind of got on board when they see that you're serious about the community, about the parents realise that you mean business for the children, and the staff realise that actually we can trust you to do the right thing. Then I think you can move people forward. You can.
Are there quick wins? So it sounds like you spoke to parents, you spoke to the teachers that were there, the leadership that remained there.
We put in place something called Meet the Head, and we actually transported that back to St Matthews.
Okay.
And it's a kind of, and it was weekly that we did it there, where parents could come in and just ask us anything, and it was challenging. They were firing, really challenging things at us. But you've got to face that. You've got to be on it. You've got to be honest with parents and say, gosh, we don't know yet. We're not sure, but we will get there, and we need your support. We need you to back us, because we know where we're going. We know where we're taking the school. And gosh, with all the controversy around Ofsted, you can sink into those reports a lot. And often, when you go to a school, whatever state that school's, and I've worked in inadequate schools. I've, had my daughter, and the first job I went into was an inadequate school with a Senko, where they hadn't had a Senko for 2 years. It was an absolute mess. But you know what? That school had heart and that grit, and the children were tough crowd. But you know what? They wanted good teachers, and they wanted people who cared. So you're right. It is words on a page, and actually there's living, breathing people in there, and families and communities that actually we once you get to grips with that, you can.
I find that really interesting about what you said, and it sounds like there are leaders and there are head teachers who take different approaches, but you decided the most important thing was the people and the people in the school and the community of the school. So you spent your time talking to people, because there are some leaders who might bury themselves in the data and try and do it this way and that way. But I know a few head teachers, and there's one I'm thinking about particularly, and he'll say that he feels like he spends his time 9 till 3 walking around the school, just checking in with this child and checking in with this person, with people. And then he thinks, oh no, now I've got all the paperwork side of it to do out of school. And he thinks sometimes people look at him and think, oh, why is he walking around all the time? But he knows that's the most important place for him to be. And it sounds like you made a similar decision there.
Definitely. Definitely. And it's not that we didn't have to, as you said, not that we didn't have to do all of that, because we did. Those were the days when you had Ofsted coming back to you kind of every half term. So we knew we had to have everything in place. But gosh, if that was the first place we were going to come from, we wouldn't have got far with the people. And we needed to get the people on board and on side.
I've worked in schools where we give certificates for resilience and determination and perseverance and marvellous metacognition. And the children enjoy receiving the certificate, and it gives me a chance to say something lovely about the children in my class. But do they really know what metacognition is? And do they really know what I'm praising them for? I'm not always sure. And I feel like behaviour, if we educate our children about behaviour, sometimes they can own that a little bit more, and they know when they're becoming dysregulated, and they know how to regulate themselves. They know what's going on. Is that the approach that you take with your children?
Yeah, definitely. At St Matthews, we're really explicit around teaching about the learning behaviours and the behaviours that we want to see, but also why we want to see those behaviours and how they're going to support you with learning. We also talk through with the children about how the science of learning, how do you learn, how do you remember? It's okay to forget. We even show the face that children might do when they forget. oh. And we say that face is okay, but actually what's the behaviour that you're going to do to be able to get that learning back? So I think it's really important. And as you said, down to something as simple as handwriting, actually, when is the time when I need your best handwriting? How does it support you to be able to join? What happens when you're fluent and efficient? You can free up space in your brain to be able to do the thinking rather than worrying about how am I going to get these words onto the page. So actually linking that all together and sharing that with the children. And we do think about that. We think about how do I present that to reception, but we start early. And how do I then present that? What do I say when we get to year 6 then? But every year they know they get that same initial message. We also support the teachers as well, because actually every teacher is different. And sometimes the teacher might be need to work on a different learning behaviour than another teacher. So we actually use our coaching system to support with that. And very early on, we're getting teachers to unpick this needs to be my focus for the first couple of weeks, actually, because I want to get my children really trained on how we pass out books and how we collect them in, because I know that if I can cut down on that, I've got more time then to do the input on the teaching and the learning that happens. Or actually, I want to really create a culture where we know each other and we really so I'm going to work on names. I want to make sure I've got the names down pat. I want to be able to greet them at the door, get that really good start to the day. That might be one teacher's focus, but it might not be another's. So we actually work with our as coaches and coachees and really focus down on that.
And I think things like walkthroughs and Step Lab have streamlined things in terms of coaching, which is a great thing, I think.
It goes back to that idea of context and what can work somewhere. So in America, there's a system around that. It's still okay to have that kind of level of paperwork and that level of workload. Where in the UK, we're in a different space now, aren't we? In terms of mental health, well-being. And we have to take that on board, don't we? And have to kind of keep fidelity to that instructional culture.
And I think that's the key thing. You've got
to adapt to suit the school.
I liked a little point that you made, Tracey, about the targets are really specific. So sometimes people's target is curriculum coverage, and it's absolutely huge. Whereas as yours, one of the coaching targets might have been how the children give out the books. And they're the really key, really important parts that sometimes get overlooked. And it reminded me, it's almost Austin's butterfly type thing, where the teacher just comes in and they just give a little critique, a little bit, but it makes a huge difference in that long run. Coming back to the EEF, I love one of their guidance documents around implementing change. And actually there's a page which I always go to, and I think it might be page 22 or 23. It's a yellow page and there's a table in there. And basically it's giving you a page full of ideas of how to implement change that isn't a Wednesday afternoon staff meeting. And I think that's so valuable, because we kind of stuck in this tradition of, I want to make a change in school. Do you know what? I'll tell people on a Wednesday afternoon at 4:30 when they're tired, they're in the middle of the week, they've still got tomorrow's lessons and they've got marking from tonight. It sounds like you do lots through coaching, but are there other ways that you implement change?
I think I think this is where the EEF guidance reports are so powerful. And one of the reasons why we wanted to become a research school, because we were very conscious that, gosh, there are so many things that you do in schools that just do not work. But there are some really good best bets. And I think good implementation for us is that best bet. And I think one of the things that we've taken from the EEF is just do less better. And I think we're very conscious that we don't change. Whatever we deliver on a Wednesday is not new every week. And I think we've certainly been in that phase where reading this Wednesday, maths next Wednesday, speaking and listening the week after, history the week after that gives nobody any time to embed anything. So I think we've been really clear with our professional development that we've got less things to work through across the year. 3 things, we say. Of course, we've got other things that are simmering, but we've got 3 things that we're working on. And then we can dedicate 3 staff meetings to that. We can dedicate half a term to that, depending on what we want to move forward. And we did that with RSC, didn't we?
And I think we that guidance report also says that implementation is not an event, it's a journey. And I think one of the things that you have to do is you have to action plan. You have to be really clear about actually what is the change that we want to see? What are some of the ingredients that we need to make sure then?
What does success look like?
What does success look like? And how are we going to, and how long is this going to take? So actually in the first 3 months, I might not even touch professional development. It actually might be about me exploring and finding out getting some key data, that data meaning in the widest sense, parents, talking, questionnaires, lots of different things to really understand and unpick what the priority is. I think sometimes we're in schools, we're kind of firefighting, but we don't really have a priority. So we're kind of scattergun. We use lots of things and then it doesn't kind of work. And actually, if you really plan for it, knowing that it's a journey and it's not just going to happen over time, then you can really be really clear about the steps that you're going to take. And the other thing that we do is that you've got to, as a leader, say, I'm going to take some things away. Some things have got to go.
Yeah.
Sonia finds that hard. I have to be, I have to realise that she's the leader and she has the ultimate decision.
Yeah.
But I find that my role is then to really be really clear about, Sonia, just hear me, that this is the reason. I'm not saying to take this away because I don't want to do it, or I'm being lazy. Or
it's not good.
It's not good. And because that's a brilliant thing, but actually, if we keep it as it is, it's not being successful anyway. So let's think about how we can tweak it, but keep fidelity to that thing. Or actually, Sonia, it was brilliant of a time, but it's got to go because you're saying that you want to move this forward. You're saying that this is something better.
Can I give you a specific example? Yeah. So you do, in your curriculum, you have 2 days pure reading for pleasure.
Yeah.
So I imagine something had to go.
Yeah.
And you also read every day for pleasure.
Yeah.
So what had to go for the reading to come in?
I think you have to make some decisions about your curriculum. I think you've got to be quite courageous. The primary curriculum it's packed. I think when you work through your curriculum and you do your endpoints and you say that by the end of year 6, your children need to know, you want your children to learn that, and that. You can then map out the journey for your children to get there. And in mapping out the journey, you can take away that. You can take away that. You cannot teach that. And you've got to be clear. You can't teach everything. We're also very, very open in our school about timetables. Whenever anybody comes to our school, they all say to us, how do you fit everything in?
Yeah.
And we say, we have a timetable, but I never walk in a door and think, right, year 3, 9 o'clock, they're supposed to be teaching phonics. If I walk in and they're teaching RE, I know that it's because the teacher's made a decision that she needs to pick up on RE, and I'm fine with that. We're not wedded to a timetable. We're wedded to the things that we know as professionals, professional trust, that we need to get done in that week. And if it means that I teach one less maths lesson, it's got to be maths.
Because I lead maths. Not English.
Not English. Don't you dare not teach English. No, I'm joking. If it means you teach one less thing or you've taken out 3 things, then I trust that you knew why you did it. And you're going to get it done at some point, or you're not going to do it. But the children are going to get the very best of what you are doing. And I think we need to, and I suppose, in our context, we are on paper an outstanding school. So maybe we do some things that if you're in a school that's in special measures RI, you just don't feel that you can do. But I do think we've got to be brave about the fact that we can't do everything. We can't do everything. We made the decision based on the research around reading for pleasure that we want our children to leave St Matthew's knowing that to be a reader is an identity. It is a gift. It is something that actually empowers your learning across all areas of the curriculum. The research is clear about children who read for pleasure. And we know them, we see them in our classrooms. Children who pick up books are the ones that do well everywhere because they've got the background knowledge. So actually the research is telling us that it's as important as maths. It's as important as history. It's as important as everything. So actually we've got to make time for it. But that's a decision that as a school you have to make. You've got to make your choices. So that was the choice that we made.
Just to add some colour to this as well, Chris Dyson, who we spoke to, his big thing is maths and times tables. And he made a conscious decision, this is where I'm going to go with it, just like you have done with reading. And both have been successful. I think that really speaks to me that we need to be decisive and you cannot do everything. I think that's a really key point. Teaching at St Matthew's sounds like a lovely place to work. It sounds like you think about the people and their workload. And one of the first things that some people will think when they hear, 2 days reading for pleasure, that sounds good, no marking. I like the sound of that. What is teacher workload like at St Matthew's, and what do you do to enable teachers to have a work-life balance?
None of our teachers take books home because we know how demoralising that is to put that box in your boot, drive all the way home, not take it out, and then bring it back to school the following day. And we're really clear. We talk about the things, actually. There's things that you can do in school and there's things that you need to take home. You might have to take home. Marking is not one of them. So as part of the rigour and management when we're coaching, one of the things that we will work with teachers on is pen in hand. How do you actually move around the classroom really swiftly and be able to have those brilliant feedback conversations at the same time, but actually check on that work and just mark that so that it's sorted. So we've really...
and I do think, we have made the point that it's not no marking. It's less marking, more looking and more responding to what you see. And making sure that, because we do lots of guided work in our school. We've got tables where we have groups of children come and work with the teacher. And that is where we come across misconceptions. Modelling is really important. It is about those pedagogies of teaching, things like Rose and Shine or whatever else you within your school have see as your pedagogies. It's about ensuring that teachers understand those pedagogies and really use them really well to enable you then to know when things are not working in your class, and then you can address that. Marking doesn't help you to address that. Looking helps you to address that. Reading children's work helps you to address that. Talking to children helps you to address that. Not marking and having 5 lines on there that children never read.
3 stars and a wish.
Yeah.
And from an Ofsted point of view, as long as we're adhering to the policy that we've set in school, then Ofsted are comfortable with that. So your marking policy says pen in hand, we don't take things, there's not a deep expectation of a deep mark every 2 days or something like that.
And people come in and they say to us, we can't really see much in the books, marking, what do you do? Why? And we tell them that what the evidence, because again, the EEF have a great document about feedback, and we're very conscious of enabling teachers to understand the research. What is the research telling us about good feedback? What does that look like? What are the opportunities then that provides for children?
Will you tell us a little bit about what your pupil progress meetings do or don't look like? So from a traditional point of view, we maybe had the teacher does lots of marking and then they write down lots of data and the children do tests, and then we come and we talk about, this child's dropped a little bit here on this matrices and this child needs to be here.
And we've been there. We've been in that space.
We've moved far away from that. We just call them classroom catch-ups.
Okay.
It's literally an opportunity for the teacher. We see that. I deal with data and it's my job to do the number crunching and all of that kind of stuff. A teacher doesn't need to, they need to be able to really understand where the children are at and what the next steps are. And that's the kind of conversations that we have. We literally pull them together. We come together and we just have a discussion around the children, any next steps. And then we talk about actually how can we then support you to move that forward. And if we've got any tips or anything that we've used, we talk about that. Or then we say, let's have a look at how we can move that forward. And what we try to do is be really listen into the conversations, because sometimes there's some key threads that are actually not just about one teacher, it's a whole school thing.
I think we've seen that in our school. We've seen children flourish, and it links really well with our kind of church ethos around flourishing, because that is the kind of Church of England word. And I think it's when I read Ron Berger's original book years and years ago, it's that empowerment that strikes you about the book. Gosh, because he was working in challenging circumstances, but it was that you can do it, you can do it, you can do it mentality that I think is really, really important for teachers to have. Yeah.
So rather than the critique, is the empowerment. I can improve, I can be better.
Yeah.
That strikes me for your children, but also across your staff as well. Like your staff seem to have that. I'm good and I can be better.
Definitely.
I loved, as I said, I loved your chapter, Tracey, and it made me think about teaching year 5, and we were looking at Harry Potter, and we would read through. There's a section in it where Harry's approaching Hogwarts, and I'm reading it to the children. We're all engaged in it, and we're almost in Harry's shoes. And I'll say to the children, "And what do you think Harry was feeling at this point? What could he see? Oh, I can see Hogwarts in the distance." And next to him is Hagrid, and they're in the boat. And how would you feel if you were in that boat? And then they're inputting those emotions, those feelings into their writing, and they produce some fantastic work. And all the children produce fantastic work. And I remember doing little things like we write with felt tip pens on A3 paper because presentation wasn't important at that point. It was the ideas and getting those down. And then my English lesson finishes and my maths lesson starts, and I'm teaching a problem, a word problem. And I model it to the children, and then we solve it together, and I show them in a perfect way how you would solve that problem. I don't share it with them. I don't talk them through. I don't make mistakes. I don't get stuck and have to start again. So it struck me about your chapter about modelling and going on that journey with the children. We do it in English quite well, I think.
Yeah.
So how would you advise teachers to spread that into other subjects?
I think what you're trying to do, I think, as Ron Berger says, it's about getting the children to see you as a bit of an expert in that part of that piece of learning. And he talks about he was a carpenter and he watched an expert carpenter and he learnt from that. And I think when you work alongside someone, they talk it through, don't they? What's happening, the thoughts that are happening in your head, the things that you're having to think of, the things that you're having to refer to. And I think as part of all of the curriculum, there are opportunities when actually I've taught you some new learning or a new piece of knowledge, and now I want to apply it. Listen to me as the expert, kind of think aloud as to what's happening in my head when I see that problem. What are some of the things that I could do? I could solve it like this, but maybe it's not efficient. I could solve it like this, and actually this is a quicker way, and actually it gets me to the answer faster. So how do we model all of that process? Is actually the children see that there's a variety of ways to answer this problem. How do we sometimes start with the answer and sometimes take away that feeling that actually, I know particularly for maths, everything always has to be about being right. The science of learning says for children to understand things, it's about schema. And if we don't model the connection, so for instance, if I'm doing 345 add 20, I've got to say, actually, I'm thinking about place value. I know I'm adding a number with tens. So actually, I can do this in my head rather than, whereas some children will do a written calculation. I might not need a written calculation because actually I can look at the tens. There's 5 tens there. I can just add on 2 more. And now I know that the answer is da-da-da. It's about that process.
So specifically in the class then, you will give, the children will look at a problem or a question and there'll be time given to discuss almost like, what do I already know?
Yeah, definitely.
Rather than, I'm not interested in the answer yet, just what do I know?
And part of the process is the teacher expertly modelling that first.
Yeah.
So that's why we do that idea of the gradual release. We'll do my turn where I'm modelling that. Then let's do one together. Our turn, let's have a go at, and then now, once you feel they're confident, you actually release the baton to them and you say, now it's your turn. You have a go at a similar problem. But they've seen you go through that process, make the links. Because again, sometimes if we're modelling and we're putting up things in the classroom, they can just become wallpaper, but they need to see you. Actually, I'm at this point in the writing and I want the reader to feel this. I'm going to use a noun phrase because I want to get across exactly what that thing looks like. Or I want that thing to come alive. So now let's look at our personification toolkit. I'm going to use that now because at this moment, I want the reader to see this thing become something else. If we don't explicitly model that, they won't see that the tools that they have around them, how do I use these tools? How do I use this knowledge, and how do I make those connections? You know, you're talking about the children and not underestimating them. And I think there's some children, they might not have the most perfect handwriting, or they might not be able to do the presentation perfect, but they really know they've really taken on board what you've taught them. So again, another key pedagogy that we really need to focus on is that idea of scaffolding. How do we support those children and scaffold the way that they capture their learning, so that actually we can really grasp what they are taking on, and they can feel a sense of, I get this, and I can achieve, I can achieve, and I can show that.
And it is just rethinking what that journey looks like for all children, because there are children, there's some high need SEND pupils that we've got who won't get to greater depth. They won't. But that's fine, that's good. It's about what we offer to them within our space. And we know we're on a journey with that. We've got some children who I've worked in special schools who would have been in special schools, but the system that we've got means that more mainstream schools are having to take it on board. We're not necessarily confident about it, but we want them to have the best that we can give. And we want to get better in that space. And we know that for those children, the journey looks different. And that's okay. So if you're measuring a school on the outcomes that every child has to get to expected, some schools who are inclusive, who do want to embrace all children at all levels, they get scared about that because you're taking in children who diminish that data a little bit more. And then when after they come in and say, but you're not all children, they can't. They can't. But they can make great progress within their ability, and they can flourish and they can thrive, and it can be amazing to watch the changes for those children within their learning capacity.
It always used to make me smile at pupil progress meetings with my data, especially in Key Stage 1. And it'd say, there's a difference here with your boys and your girls. We need to close that gap. I used to think, why? My girls are more mature at this age. They're understanding more. They're able to do this, they're able to do that. And my boys, they'll catch up later. But that shouldn't be my target, is to try and squash this natural gap.
It just doesn't make sense. No. So we've just got to think about that.
From a scaffolding point of view, is that one of your forms of differentiation then? We're teaching all of our children together. We're all looking at a similar thing, a similar concept. But I'm going to scaffold it for you and you. And is that where you're encouraging your teachers to spend their planning time, thinking about this child? They'll just need this model, or they'll just need this word bank, or they'll just need...
So one of the things that we do, and it's come through leverage leadership, is we think about the productive struggle. And we call this, what is that part of this? You might be doing a unit on fractions, for instance. What is the part of that learning across that 3 or 4 weeks that's going to be the really toughest bit to teach? And actually, what would that look like for all of the children to get that? What are you looking for as the teacher? So you're really clear. And then what we do is then map out some of the scaffolds that we're going to put in place. So what are the resources? What are the manipulatives? What are the models, the exemplars the examples that we might have to use to really support our class, or support some of the children who are going to really struggle with that? How are we going to model it? How are we going to explain it? And we kind of really, that's probably the only piece of written planning that we do, is we unpick that productive struggle. And I think it is about having some clear ways. Again, teacher workload. What are some clear strategies? And again, we've thought about this. Let's talk about the send 5 a day. And one of that 5 a day is scaffolding. And actually scaffolding works for all children. So we've unpicked that and really thought about what are some of the, and we've talked about it as a staff, that teachers are doing something really great in their classroom. Show us that. What do you do?
What do you do?
Yeah, and that's what we do. So even we do like little assessments after our PSHE, and one of the teachers started to adapt that to support her SEND pupil, because he knew everything, but it was about him being able to how does he get that down? The first thing I did is just, everybody have a look at this. This is one way that we can adapt, we can scaffold this, and he can show what he's learning. So it's about just having some key tools. It's almost like you need a tool belt, aren't you? You've got a little tool belt. You need your tool belt. I've got these good strategies that really support me to be able to see what all of my pupils can do and not just make assumptions that they're send, they can't do it, they don't understand it.
And I think when you're in a school, in a space where as teachers you can have those discussions, you can talk about where you struggle. I mean, we've been in some PDs where, gosh, you come out and you people who've like, God, that was great. That was a great session. We've discussed, we've wrestled. We've been in phonics sessions where, gosh, we've had to wrestle with the phonics. And we've come, teachers have come out and said, yeah,
I can do that.
I was good. Then we're talking about TAs because our TAs come to our training. So they've and they've given it full commitment in that PD to really understand. And I think you've got it's about cultivating that kind of space within your school where staff are not worried about not understanding how to do something. They're not scared to ask. We always say, just ask us. There's no judgment, just ask. We're happy to answer it. It's really important that you ask. Yeah.
Final question. You've spoken about not having to work harder or longer to do better. Can you give us an example or a couple of examples that teachers can pick up and take back to their school tomorrow to improve the experience of the children in their care? Feel free to have some thinking time.
Yeah. Read them a good book. I would encourage teachers to be teachers who read and readers who teach, because knowing good books have just got that power. It has to come back to books for me, I suppose. Books just have that power.
What do you read?
Everything. Gosh,
fiction, non-fiction,
fiction, non-fiction. I read everything. I am that person who reads for pleasure and progress, and I'm always sending out things to staff, probably inappropriately. I'm sure people say, God, Sonia said something again. But I am that person who likes to absorb. And because I do judge for Empathy Lab and I judge for UKLA Book Awards, got that if you come into my room, there's more books than space to sit down. I did a competition online and I just won a box of about
50 looks like
30 books.
30 to 40,
and there's just more books to read. And I just think, just love books. If you don't love books, pretend to love books and empower your children to read with agency, because reading is the thing. It's social justice to me. Social justice in the same way that we are accountable for teaching maths, we've got to be accountable for empowering our children to be readers. Yeah.
Do you get lost in a book?
All the time, yeah.
A little birdie told me that you sometimes know the ending.
I read the end. I deliberately read the end of books. I can't wait. I read that first. I can't wait. I refuse to be held in suspense. I want to know, and then I love then to build towards what I already know is going to happen. And I do that with TV. I can't watch a program if I haven't read the little synopsis about what it's about. I can't wait. I need to know. Yeah, that is just me. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you both. I've really loved the conversation. And I know people at home are going to love it too. So thank you very much.
Do you use a research-based approach? And what happens at your staff meetings? Let us know by emailing podcast@whiterosemaths.com or on any of our social media channels. We read and reply to each one and would love to draw upon your thoughts in future episodes.